she told me that she'd been to Belize, she'd been to San Pedro, and that's where she first met Andy. She met Andy in San Pedro in, I think it was 1990. I got to San Pedro in 92. And she met Andy in 1990 when he lived down there. And when he first went down, and she had stayed at the Sunbreeze Hotel. So we had a bit in common. We were talking about it. She was asking me how the island, what it was like. I says, well, from what I know, I said, it's probably still the same as it was back in 1990. She knew David and Sue. She ate at the restaurant. She knew quite a few people on the island. She couldn't believe that Dave was my cousin. I showed a picture of Dave. I said, that's Dave. I always had a picture of Dave when he's in the army and stuff. And there was a picture of me and Dave together. And it was a little photograph that I kind of like always carried with me. We took that when we were in Fintner. When I was about, I think it was on my 22nd birthday. And Dave had come back from Germany. He was when he was in the military, he came back from Germany. And we had a picture taken together. And it was in the local British Legion Club. And him and I were having a couple of drinks. And we had a photograph taken, and I always carried it. And I showed the picture, and she was kind of really, really blown away. And she was asking me how Sue was, and she kind of saw by my answer that I wasn't too fussed on Sue. I told her the reason why. I wasn't going to lie, and she had actually said to me that she felt Sue to be a bit frosty. So, and she knew Taff and Rose. She knew Amanda. She knew quite a few people down there on the island. Used to be a woman down there called Leslie Lane. So she knew all those, because she was rich. So she kind of knew all those people. She knew all those ladies and stuff like that. She knew Fido's. She remembered Fido's. And she began to reminisce a little bit. And she says, oh, it's a place I must go back down to again at some time. I told her at some point I'd probably be moving back down again. She asked me if I was going to stay in Miami. I said that, Miami's lovely. I don't think I'll stay in Miami for the rest of my life. I said, there's other places I want to go to. And she was like, oh, move out here, come out to Bermuda. And to be quite honest, I was really tempted to be thinking about moving to Bermuda. But, I would have only done that at that particular point if Dave had been there. Because, I was so close to Dave. And I was kind of dependent on Dave. Back then, especially for friendship and for him, as a mentor and to learn from him, because I could take care of myself in the world. I'm a man. I wouldn't class myself as an alpha male, but I'm a man. I don't fucking take bullshit, you know what I mean? And, I could take care of myself, but I was close to Dave. And, for the time being, I kind of needed to be around Dave because I knew that he needed me too, because we were the only two that we could trust, really trust. And he was going through a hard time. So I was chomping at the bit to get back down to San Pedro as quick as I could. Because I hadn't spoken to Dave now, in 3 days as well. And for me, that was quite strange, to be honest. Not to talk to him and, hey, Gibbo, what's the crack, you fucking madman, and all this type of stuff, you fucking overgroup and Fuhrer, and to hear his voice and, I always listened to the tone of Dave's voice, and I could tell a lot of the times when he was kind of forcing himself to, to be in a good mood, or, he was genuinely, like, we were always genuinely happy to hear each other and speak to each other, and we could pick up a conversation, where it left off. Without fault. We spoke over each other. We tried to get the last word in. You know what I mean? We finished each other's sentences. You know what I mean? We just knew each other really, really well. But we always had a laugh. And that was the main crux of the thing, was that when we left the phone call, yeah, we could be pissed at each other sometimes. Dave still thought he was my dad. He was my dad, almost. Dave was an authority on everything. It fucking didn't, no matter, it didn't matter what you fucking knew, Dave was an authority on it, you know what I mean? So, but he was always positive, and he was very smart, he's very intelligent, Dave knew a lot of stuff, and I always listened to what he told me, especially if he was being stern or he was pissed off, and he would say, look, Cole, I'm just letting you know, from my experience, and he would tell me, and I would take note on that, and I would always keep that in the back of my mind. And you know, there was times I think, oh fuck, I remember Dave telling me that, and he's right, you know. So Laura knew them. She'd been down there, you know, she'd been down there for a year or two. She'd lived a good life down there. I didn't ask her about if she was married, about her husband. She just volunteered and said that, you know, her husband had, you know, he was in oil. He was originally from Galveston in Texas, outside Houston, and that he worked down there in the oil refineries and stuff, and that he had taken a massive heart attack and died at work. And he was rich. And she had married him, and she'd inherited everything. She'd inherited millions. And I think it was a couple of 100 million, something like that, maybe more, that houses and, you know, and holiday homes and yachts and all this type of stuff. And she basically just liquidated everything and got the cash. So she sold everything that he left her. They had no kids. He'd had a kid with somebody else, apparently. But she took her mother's side in a divorce or something like that before she was married to Lauren or something like that. Took the mother's side, and she took him for a bunch of money, and he gave them a big payout, and they never had nothing more to do with him. And that was it. So eventually he met Lauren, and they got married a short time later. And yeah, so she basically inherited everything that he left her. She liquidated everything, turned it into cash, put it in the bank, and left. She just said she didn't want to be around him. So so that's what she told me, and that was it. So she was absolutely loaded. But she had a soft spot for Andy, you could tell. Andy was a really easygoing guy. Andy was like a can of beans, you know. You got what you saw on the tin. And that was it. There was no fucking additives. There was no added sugar. There was no added salt. You know what I mean? There was no added preservatives, colouring. Andy was just like that. Andy was just plain simple and straight. You know what I mean? And you know, you talk Andy how you found him. I really don't think Andy gave a fuck at the end of the day whether he liked him or he didn't. You know, that was it. So, but Andy wasn't a pushover for nobody, and he never took advantage of anybody, whether they had money or they didn't. And that was it. Andy was a man's man, and he didn't have to prove nothing to nobody. So, but she was nice. It was nice, pleasant, you know, time talking to her and stuff. And I was absolutely blown away that she knew Dave and Sue, and Amanda and Taff and Rose. She didn't mention Fiona, so I don't know if she mentioned Fiona, you know, whatever. I'd never mentioned her, so I didn't really say anything. But she knew Dick Davis. She knew Sally Jean. She knew Johnny Grief. You know, the ones that own Tropic Air. She knew everybody basically down there, you know. But she just decided to, you know, she went for a holiday in Bermuda and never went back to Belize. She said, I didn't really own anything. I rented a hotel room down there. She says, I didn't want to live in a house. She goes, I rented a hotel room. She goes, everything was done for me. The sheets were changed, you know, the bed was changed and floors were mopped. You know what I mean? She goes, I lived. She goes, and I danced and I drank, and, you know, she says, and I had romances with guys and stuff. She says, and I just never had anything serious. She says, and I had a bag of clothes. She says, when I went up to Bermuda for a holiday, she said she saw a little house that she bought. After she had been living in this little hotel for a bit, she saw a little cottage style house. She bought that, but she always came down to the little bar at night time and ate at the restaurant and spoke to the people she knew. She said that the bag of clothes that she took with her to Bermuda, threw them out, or gave them away to charity or something. Once she got there and bought new clothes, she just didn't want anything of Belize to remind her of, and that was it. Wow, I was like, fucking, that's a good way to live. She goes, I don't attach myself to anything. She says that I can't walk away from in 10 minutes. She goes, if I feel that whatever it is, person or thing is going to cause me harm. And that's just exactly the way that I felt and the way that David lived as well. And I think Andy was the same. So, you know, we had that in common. So we were just talking away. She drank her Cosmopolitan. She was playing away with Kitty. Kitty basically just snuggled into her big titties, and fucking fell asleep. And then before we knew it, Andy had come down and, you know, sat down with us, and it was time to order. So, again, it was a good bit of crack, good bit of a laughing. and it was a great time. I had steak and chips and eggs again, and a big thing of orange juice, and